So we've been going through emotional martial arts and going through the different stages of what it means to be a highly skilled emotional martial artist. We're doing stage 2 right now, which is all about learning how to punch and block from the perspective of emotions. So learning how to feel a full spectrum of emotions, learning how to recognize it through body language, learning how to release these emotions, to figure out discernment in it, healthy and unhealthy, what that looks like, what's mine, what's someone else's. Learning like active stretching of that, so expanding our capacity to be able to both feel and express within all of the different emotions: anger, fear, shame, disgust, sadness, happiness. And finally, learning how to bring all of that to our heart and find some empathy. And last week we did a bit of a very deep dive into shame and other aspects. This week we're going to look at the energy of disgust. So, disgust, let's imagine disgust first. A person who is expressing disgust. Disgust is a difficult energy to actually bottle up and pressure cooker, because it's when we feel disgusted, we have this need to express it, to bring it out, to say something, to work it. It's probably one of the hardest energies to actually keep inside of ourselves. Nonetheless, we still manage to do so. For instance, when we feel like judging another person for something that they're doing that isn't according to our behaviors what we like, or it's not our preference, we, as we're older, tend to not say something or hold ourselves short. And so it kind of goes mentally in ourselves, and we're like, oh, what's going on there? And we may make the slightest of faces. It might be like a raised eyebrow, or just the tiniest of faces, perhaps, as the disgust is working through our body and we're thinking about it. So just imagine, you can close your eyes, and just imagine what you do when you're expressing disgust towards something. Someone does something that you don't particularly like, and you feel this energy building up inside of you. It's stronger than just simply having a preference. So it's not just it's stronger than a preference, and it's a very outward movement. You can imagine some off food, perhaps. Perhaps you can imagine looking at someone that looks quite sickly or unhealthy, or someone who looks a bit toxic to you. And just look at their body language. And then look at someone who has a lot of trapped disgust. So what that looks like for me is it looks very like it's like a resting, we say resting bitch face, that like as a jargon, or resting dick face. Like they've got this permanent sort of like, I can't really even make the face, like resting like this a lot of the time. right? Or you can see it even coming through the skin, like it's just really like sort of sunken. The skin's like there's patches everywhere, and that might not be all disgust, but that's what I've generally found is people who have that like that permanent this face tend to have like distorted skin, and we see it as we look towards like, so let's say elderly people, because that's years and years and years of disgust that's been built up, right? They're not bright and shiny anymore. It's like there's a lot of different emotions that are trapped within them that create their posture, their body language, their expressionisms. I think that it's a pretty easily recognizable emotion in terms of body language. We've seen it enough to know what it looks like. And just imagine that this person has all this disgust, or even if it's yourself, now makes comments, judgments, or takes action towards that. And just feel how the body sort of opens up in terms of the energy being released. It's like you feel like you have to say something, and then you've said it, and it's like, I've said it. You might regret saying it later. You might get called out for being a judgmental dick or judgmental bitch. You might get called out for some of that behavior, but it feels good in the moment because it's this release. So what we're going to do now is the exercise to release disgust. Now, I like to do this on all fours, so on the ground, but we don't have to do that. But when practicing this exercise by yourself, you can do this. And what you're kind of doing is you're on all fours, right? Like this. And your tongue's out and you're kind of pointing down and you're making a disgust sound. So it's not quite like dragon's breath of releasing anger. It's like, and you're kind of shaking your body and that's disgusting. Now, and then bringing it to the heart, bringing the energy to the heart, and just feeling it's like the exercise. Another exercise that I like is that whine. A lot of people like doing a whine. And then just shaking it out. And then breathing it back into the heart. So, those are both fantastic ways of working the spectrum of disgust, full spectrum. Any questions or comments on that exercise, or what else you see in the realm of disgust? And at its extreme is hatred, right? So disgust as a separating energy, we're like, that's off. At its extreme form is hatred. And when it's locked in our body, right, when all of this disgust is trapped in our body, generally from other people being disgusted at us, and we take it on. It can easily form hatred. And what it does is, when it's trapped in our body, it creates self-hatred, self-disgust. We look at ourselves and we're disgusted by what we see. We look at a part of ourselves and we're disgusted. We almost find a reason, like, oh, I've got this and this. Oh, it's disgusting. Or I've got this thing on my face. Oh, like, oh, that's... I don't like that. And it comes with the energy. It's not really a preference, just a preference of, I would prefer to have clear skin. It comes with an emotion that's worked with it. Okay. Then the release and active stretching exercise for this is firstly exercising discernment. Where is the disgust coming from? So firstly, a lot of the disgust is coming from other people through forms of judgment. And perhaps it may even be feedback, and someone's calling us out for our behaviors, but it's coming with a lot of judgment. So it may be like, let's think of an example here. Let's say that I made a sarcastic comment to a friend, and it was a bit mean. And someone says, oh, that comment you made is disgusting. It's atrocious. Now, the discernment within that is, there's a partial truth here, but it was also loaded with some disgust and potentially some shame. So if we totally reject it and say that's not our stuff, right? And I see this often with a lot of spiritual teachers. This isn't mine. No, like being called out for certain hurtful behaviors. Nah, this isn't mine. This is all your stuff, right? And being very triggered by it. What we run the risk of if we reject everything, every piece of feedback that's coming towards us, is that we don't take what is the true observational reflection from that, which is, yeah, I did hurt somebody through a mean comment, right? So we have to learn to extract the emotion from the observation, and that's a critical part of the discernment process, and figuring out what's healthy and what's unhealthy. So, and this is the art. This is the art of this, which is we're taking some feedback, but just the informational component. We're leaving out the judgment. We're leaving that behind. And we're taking on board and reflecting on what was said to us. I was being mean by a comment. And then we can take reflection and figure out, is there something for me to do here? Where did this come from? Where was this born from? And so we're not completely numb to it. We can receive it and we can act on it. That becomes the real difficulty with, like, let's say, discipline and parenting, where we're potentially making observations of our children, or maybe we're managers of a large team and we're making observations of behaviors in a workplace. And we're loading often, or they're being made towards ourselves, and they're loaded with emotion. And so it's just sometimes flat out rejected. The more reflective we can be and aware that we can be of how we are delivering the observation or the feedback, the better it can be potentially received. Because if I just simply make an observation as a feedback that has no charge, right? It's got no shame, it's got no fear, it's got no disgust. There's no emotional bomb that's attached with it. The chance of it being readily received, still unpleasant to hear, but more readily received, is higher. We still may be triggered, but it's a more artful delivery. And we're not shying from delivering it. We still deliver it, right? We're not shying away from the conflict. We're still approaching it, and we're still saying something, and we're still speaking what is our observation. Any questions on that? So there's a large part of discernment that's needed as a practice. And when we can truly take that type of feedback and the observational content out, and also perhaps not needing the observational content, we're observing ourselves, and there's like potentially some toxic behaviors that we're seeing. We can, in a healthy way, decide whether we want to take action for that. Are we going to go and call it out? Are we going to extract ourselves from the situation? What are we going to do in this scenario? How are we going to approach the information that is coming from the disgust that is saying, hey, here's some toxicity, here's some poisonous behaviors going on here, and decide whether we want to take action. Now, if we notice that it's unhealthy disgust that's continually showing up, often disgust is in a loop. So, for instance, if we are disgusted by eating noises, for instance, or certain sounds, right? It's not very it's not healthy. We're not really noticing, let's say, toxic behavior that is life-threatening, that's threatening our livelihood, that we need to protect ourselves from, that's like creating an environment of danger, right? It's unhealthy. Then what we can do is the release and stretch exercise, which is I can feel that this is coming up. I'm constantly being worked into judgment about eating noises. And when it shows up, instead of, say, holding it back because my mind is telling me this is such a silly thing to be disgusted at, but the feeling is kind of rising and we can't do anything about it. And it's like, okay, I have to leave the room right now because the eating noises is too much. Or you need to stop the eating noises because this is working me too much. Whatever it may be. Often it is table manners and like manners or politeness within society. Because this is often where the discipline has been enforced through disgust by the parents, and so that condition, that rule, is set into us, trapped by disgust. So like, we as kids might be eating off the ground, and the ground's probably dirty, and it's probably got lots of germs. And we're like, oh no, stop, don't eat off the ground. Oh, that's disgusting. Don't, we're making the face, we're projecting the emotion, and the child's like, but what? Like, child doesn't understand. But the logic behind not eating off the ground, right? A child really can only understand, maybe, if they're sick afterwards from eating off the ground, and then perhaps they're like, okay, I'm not going to eat off the ground anymore. But as parents, we decide to intervene early, and I find these days we tend to intervene earlier and earlier, way earlier than is what is needed. We sort of disempower our children from this and from their own sense of being able to feel into toxicity with their own disgust. And so we intervene too early, and then we place the disgust there at that type of behavior, and it's trapped in us. So then we go through life and we have perfect table manners, we're grown up and we're sitting at the dinner table, we're all quiet, we're all very well behaved, etc. But it's all powered by disgust and shame and fear. And so as we see other people doing it, perhaps our children, and it's often our own children that we feel like, I only do that to my own children. I'm only disgusted at my own children. I'm not disgusted at other children. This is what my mom often tells me anyways. It's like, I'm only disgusted at you because you're my son. I'm not disgusted at other people. It's like, why are you why? Because we have this feeling, this need to like put what rules and emotions have been put onto us as that mold onto our children as a replication. So when that arises and we see, okay, it's coming up, it's a bit unhealthy, and I recognize that there's a loop here, because every time this happens or I see this happening, I get really triggered. So we get on all fours, we put our tongue out, and we release it. The important part here is to then bring it back to the heart. If we just keep releasing it without bringing it to the heart, it doesn't actually clear the emotion from our system. We haven't addressed it at the core. Because what happens is when we begin to bring it back to the heart, we actually begin to see images from our childhood where our parents perhaps were being disgusted at us in exactly the same way. We like literally replicated the same thing, or perhaps something a bit different. It might be eating of apple noises, right? We might have changed the manner or the rule. So like perhaps they were disgusted at us for making sounds with our forks and knives. And when growing up, we're not disgusted by other people making sounds with forks and knives. We might be disgusted at another person eating an apple loudly, or slurping noodles or soup. So although they weren't disgusted at us, our parents weren't disgusted at us for eating apples loudly or slurping soup, they were disgusted at us making sounds with our forks and knives. But we took that and sort of changed it as to how we would express it outwardly. So we can be a bit sort of shifty about it, right? But the core wound is still there. So until we do that release of all of that disgust and then take it back to the heart, we won't see where that core conditioning got locked in.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That's it. And perhaps we're going to get onto that, so just let me know if we're going to. Is there not a natural civilizing process that needs to happen in relation to, imparting onto the children, not to chew their mouths open, and to connect with others by saying hello and goodbye and pleases and thank yous and so on? Like I understand that that's like a social conditioning that we're putting onto the children. But from my perspective, I look at the kids and I'm like, it fosters a connection. Like I can see some children just cruising around doing, not ever making eye contact, not ever greeting, just kind of in their own world, which is absolutely fine. However, there's like a missed opportunity for connection with me and that child, or so I get a little bit disgusted with children who've got really bad manners. Not a little bit, I get very disgusted with children who have very bad manners, because I feel like uh, warm and happy and connected, warm and happy when I connect with them in that intentional way, even if it's just for a split second. But I am projecting my own sort of stuff. But like, where's the balance between the civilizing force of society and conscious community compared to imposing these kind of structures around pleases and thank yous and chew with your mouth shut and don't scrape your plate?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The thing is, what we're sometimes scared of when trying to, looking at deleting these conditions is we think, okay, if I delete this, does that mean that I'm going to start eating off the ground? Like, does that mean that I'm going to lose all of these really connecting things that we're doing at the table with other people? Am I going to lose it all? Like, if I didn't put this here and it wasn't put in place for me, would I lose all that other magic that I'm getting? That's generally our fear showing up and saying, no, keep this. There's a relevance here. And that's up to each of us individually to feel out whether we still feel a need for a condition or not. But my suggestion in that connection piece is actually that there are other... If we are taught... See, one thing we're missing in society right now is education, specifically around heart-centered bonding with each other as children. We're often just like, let's say at kindergarten, left to our own vices, right? They're just like, if they're not fighting, that's a good thing. But we're not doing exercises like deliberately, such as just sit down and eye gaze. Sit down with another person, hold hands, and just look at each other. And so, because that's just one basic example of like a bonding exercise for children that can be done. We're instead kind of given crayons and go for your life. Oh, let's paint stuff. Let's, and people say, but how difficult is it to sit a child down and actually have them connect with the other child? Well, if we don't attempt it at all, we'll never get there. So I think that as a society, we have missed... And we have missed like that educational piece that we teach bonding. And, children may learn it from their parents. How often do parents sit down with each other in front of their children, hold hands, and just eye gaze and say, hey, we're going to do this exercise with each other. You want to do this with us? And just sit in a circle and just look at each other and feel the magic that happens. Because my sense is that once we feel that magic, it's a magic you can't forget and you want all the time. So, but it becomes sort of separated from the notions of you're looking at your phone too much, and you're not connecting with me enough, or you're distracted and you're not present with me. We sort of mingle all of that together. My suggestion is the reintroduction not reintroduction because it was never really introduced, but the introduction of really heart-centered bonding amongst children and adults. And I know there's like, for instance, eye-gazing movements that are incredibly, people love them. They're so powerful. Such an easy exercise. Just sit down, holding the hands, and just spending time just staring at each other. Like, I'm doing that with my 6-month-old, right? And we tend to do that more with our babies. We're just like, oh, and we're just staring at them, and we might be staring at each other. We're like, oh, this is just so beautiful. And then somewhere along the line, it's lost. Where is it lost? Right? If it's lost, how do we bring it back? Right? And it takes time, because it's like cultivating a really different type of relationship. This is like a physical intimacy. It's a presence. And it's like, yeah, we can be busy throughout the day, or children can be playing. Like, but if we're spending time, like for instance, I'm spending 10 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day doing meditation, why would I not spend at least 5 minutes a day sitting with my child or sitting with my lover, holding hands and bonding, eye gazing? Not necessarily needing to have sex or kissing or anything like this, but just holding hands. And like, I facilitated a lot of these types of activities where a father is sitting with a daughter, or a daughter is a son sitting with a mother. And, they might talk every day, but suddenly they're just holding hands, that's all, and eye gazing. And so many tears, so much warmth comes out. And they're like, I can't believe we've never done this before. And there's so much resistance to do it. So much to connect. Right? So much resistance. But there are no words that are required. It's just the heart. It's a heart bonding. Right? And sometimes just hugging or just kissing is not enough. Why do I say that? Is because these behaviors are almost robotic for a lot of us now. The handshake, the hug, the kiss. It's like the kiss goodbye before work, the kiss hello when you get home. Whatever it is, it's like, or before school. They're such normalized behaviors. Is there much presence in it at all? Is the question. Sure, there can be, but is there? And so I would just invite that educational piece coming back in. It's like saying, okay, we want to come to a reset point around all of these emotions, so that our behaviors are expressed less from a space of the trapped emotion or the trapped condition. The fear in releasing it generally is that we think that these things have served us, and they actually have. We're like, oh, these behaviors have served us. They've helped either keep us safe, they've helped to connect us as a family, they've helped to protect us, and they've helped to protect other people, right? They've served us. And now you're saying, oh, crap, I need to take that away? And it's like, yeah, but do that if we've got something to replace it with. Right? That's what we're saying. So emotional martial arts and all of these concepts are like, yeah, let's come to a reset and a recalibration point, but let's replace it with something. So like, we're opening up our hearts, we're getting more vulnerable, we're taking down our walls, right? Opportunity for re-traumatization is really high now, right? Really, really high. If we don't learn new mechanisms to be able to keep us safe and to protect ourselves with like emotional martial arts, then we're just going to get re-traumatized. And so the work we've done in letting go of and getting more vulnerable has backfired on us. It's kind of counterproductive. So as with anything of removing our conditions and these emotions, things which have served us. So like, we might say like in dating, which has been a very long time since I've done any of this, but we might have a checklist of things, right? We're like, okay, this is a red flag. I hate this about this person, about these people. I don't like this, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, yellow flag here, red flag here. Or even hiring people for jobs, or, forming friendships or whatever. And so we've got all these rules, like conditions, that are like, okay, if this person is this, safe. But these rules and these lists are often set up by ourselves through trauma. We're like, I was burnt by this type of person before. So this person, type of archetype of person, is not to be trusted. I can't trust them. They're probably going to burn me. That's just one person. But we have many of these types of experiences in our life, right? When this person shows up with this behavior or this characteristic, crap, I've been burnt by this type of person before. So it's a rule, and our rule keeps us safe. Our rule keeps us protected from like these narcissists or these whatever, like hurtful individuals, people who want to abuse us, people who want to step all over us, people who don't respect our boundaries. And so rule, condition. We're like, okay, we got to delete all of that. Oh, wait, hang on, it served me before. Okay, great. Now let's learn how to have a new form of protection and safety. This is the process. So then we feel safer to be able to let it go, and less likelihood of re-traumatization. Let's go into sadness now. Now, sadness is one that's often very trapped in people. It's not an emotion we generally like to feel. When sadness is trapped in our body at a higher level of intensity, it can create a loop, which is depression. Not everyone has to be diagnosed with depression to have trapped sadness. It has different levels. And it can feel like a sticky feeling, like a stagnation. There's a lack generally, like you think about the feeling, and we're imagining that sad, and it's like a sinking feeling, kind of like you're drowning. And just look at what the body looks like. Generally, these people are quite demotivated, right? There's a lot of, if anyone's ever done like a mental health course, mental first aid health course, it's described really well, right? Like there's, like to recognize the signs, the body language signs, the motivational things, to ask, are you okay? These different tools and techniques to address sadness. I feel that as a collective, we have more tools available to us when it comes to sadness, places to call, etc. But it's generally one that we like to deny is trapped in our body, because we are so often taught as children that we need to be happy, that we need to present ourselves as being happy. Why are you sad? Let's fix that. We tend to want to fix sadness. We want to work our way out of it before truly feeling it deeply. So there's a lot of conditions around that, including around crying and around grief. How easily are we able to tap into our tears? How easily are we able to tap into our grief? When we see something that is sad, we feel something that is sad, are we actually able to feel that? Or are we numb? And the issue that we have in this society is when we turn on the news, or we look at the world outwardly, there is so much to be sad about. so much to be sad about. And this is the real challenge to us as children, is that even as we're walking down the supermarket aisles, as we're outside and we're at school or we're feeling into our parents, sadness is everywhere. And so we learn coping mechanisms to address that. We don't like feeling sad all the time, honestly. We don't like it. It's not pleasant. And so generally we tend to associate that as, like, say, a negative emotion. And we tend to associate happiness, which is on the other spectrum of the seesaw of sadness, as positive. We don't like negative things. So we tend to want to wish it away. So we start to go numb to it. We start to just say, oh, everyone's sad, everything's sad. Oh, okay. We sort of dehumanize that aspect. And so let's just feel into sadness a little bit. Perhaps just maybe imagining a sad moment. Maybe as a child, or maybe recently. Just how your body felt. And just feeling it sinking. There's no pressure for any tears to come. But if they come, allow them to come. And just feel that space of this kind of watering down. It's kind of demotivating even feeling about it. Now, really, the exercise for releasing sadness, the only one that I know of that is probably the most effective, is getting angry. And behind the anger is sometimes a lot of catharsis, like grieving, shedding of tears. But we kind of almost need a reason. Sometimes we feel like we need a reason. And it's true in a way, but it's not true in a way. Often I find that to be able to tap into our sadness, we actually have to tap into our anger first. And if we think about it, let's say it's grieving and it's full-blown sobbing. Those moments, when they generally tend to happen, are really, really saddening life moments where perhaps a loved one passes away. Perhaps we're at a funeral. And there's like the pressure cooker for sadness. It just blows. It blows us wide open. And so my sense is grief is actually really healing. It has this ability for us to just really sob. It's very cathartic. It's a full body thing. But with that, often comes anger, right? I had an ex-girlfriend die of cancer, and I was grieving so much. And I could feel all this anger that was with that. And it's very easy to say, but what are you angry at? Why are you angry? What? And we often want to find a reason to be angry at something. We're angry at the cancer. We're angry at this. We're angry at the person. There's a lot of anger that comes out. And it's just really important. And that's what I'm saying. Really, often to tap into grief and to tap into sadness, we have to address the anger part if we're to deliberately go in and release it. So sometimes we want to shame that anger away. But what happens if we shame the anger away in that grieving process is that the grief is not fully allowed to surface. The sadness is not fully allowed to be released. And we stop ourselves short of releasing all of the grief and releasing all of the sadness. And so you think about, like, for instance, breakups. Sometimes you're like, you've broken up with this person, and it's almost as though, it can be a very grieving time because it's very sad. You've had special connections with this person, and now it's just ended. And then the grief and the waves of sadness, like missing the person, comes in waves. And you're like, why does it come in waves? And why does it take a whole year or 2 years? Or sometimes people never finish being sad and grieving the ending of a relationship, whether it's a breakup or someone has died. Why? My sense of it is because when the anger has come to the surface, we have stopped ourselves from getting fully angry. So, and what that simply does is it puts it back into the box. It stops the grief short of going all the way. Now, I've experienced and I've witnessed other people experiencing breakups of very long relationships, very deep relationships, or the death of loved ones. Some people are able to grieve really quickly, and some people take a long time. And some people say, oh, it's a gender thing. It's either because you're a male or you're a female. And they say, oh, with women, it's generally a faster grieving process at the end of a relationship than with men. My sense is the reason that's true is because men have this really stoic, most men anyways, need to hold back tears, need to hold back anger, right? And so they're angry inside, they're wounded, and they want to grieve, but they stop themselves short over and over and over again. They want to distract themselves with drinking, with going and watching sports, with doing really manly things, and going out, actually even womanizing, and going, I'm going to get over this relationship by getting with as many women as I can, blah, 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 blah. Right? Women with the monthly cycle, that monthly cycle actually is extremely healing, because although a lot of people tend to want to shame away that emotional kind of roller coaster that a lot of women experience through every month, it's very healing because it's helping them release these trapped emotions. And so when it comes, it's like, I can't hold on to the pressure cooker anymore. I need to it's coming out, and I know it's coming out. And it's almost like it's both programmed in our body and it's programmed in our society that that's acceptable. And then men have been taught to hate that time, right? And it's like, come on, guys. It's just that we are uncomfortable at feeling that depth and that breadth of emotion that's coming because it's triggering us. We don't know what to do. We don't have a solution for that. We don't. Right? And so, going back to grief and being able to fully express it all, the anger that comes with it must also be released. And so, like in my last breakup, even though the relationship was kind of dying off and it felt like, it had been sticky for quite some time, there was still a lot of anger that was there. And for me, to release it, I went to a boxing bag at a gym. It was a UFC gym, and I went absolutely nuts on the bag for 4 hours. And what I noticed was, and then I brought it back to my heart. What I noticed was the waves of missing someone just wasn't there afterwards. It had just naturally reset itself. It was as though this is what I really realized from that experience was you can really finish the grieving process so quickly if you just allow yourself to dive to the depths of both the grief and the anger together. Now, the unhealthy part about all of this is sometimes we think that the grief is endless. And the thing is, if we are unable to bring that grief and that sadness and that anger back to our hearts, we can very easily end up in a loop. So like last week when we were tackling the topics of shame, and we're saying, okay, we need to feel the depths of shame to its deepest in order to actually be able to feel remorse. If we stop ourselves short of feeling all of the shame, we'll never be able to feel truly sorry. But the issue that we face is that if we are unable to bring that shame and that remorse back to our heart, there is a risk that we can be stuck in a loop of remorse and guilt. What do I mean by that? Like, if I've done something that I really regret and I'm deeply remorseful and I can't, and it was heinous. There's no excuse for this action. Perhaps I'm even potentially going to face criminal charges for this, right? It's a point of no return, right? And I'm feeling so remorseful. I'm feeling so much regret, and I can almost find no exit. And I'm feeling the remorse. When is the exit? It's like, how do I feel more intensity? It's already so intense. The missing component there is bringing that whatever event, whatever it was that we did, whatever behavior it was, to our heart for forgiveness. And it's not about another person forgiving ourselves. It's us forgiving ourselves. We truly have to find forgiveness for ourselves in that. We have to accept this happened. This happened. I'm truly sorry. And even though you don't forgive me, or the person that I did this hurtful behavior to isn't going to forgive me, I'm going to forgive myself. Because if I can't, so often this leads to suicide. So often. Because we can't live with that. It's very difficult to live with remorse in loop. Okay? And I come back to let's say, sadness. And it's potentially not as life-threatening suicidal. Why do I say that? Because if it's just only sadness rather than a combination of with regret and with remorse, let's say it's just sadness, we're generally so stuck and so demotivated that we generally lack the courage to do something like suicide. It requires a lot of courage to do that. That's not to say that someone might not drink themselves or overdose on some drug or do something, that de-inhibits them, that suddenly enables all of this courage and all of this reflection. Yeah, that's still absolutely possible. And again, the importance of the heart, bringing those moments that happened in the past, all of these moments that happened in the past, to come to a point of acceptance and embrace and forgiveness. This kudike. So we feel all the sadness, we feel all of this depressive action, and we bring it to the heart. Questions? So one point I actually do want to add to all of this is, like, we talk about, and this is probably more for the people who are going to watch this in the future, thinking this is really dangerous material to release out there into the world. Because if people start to do these exercises for themselves and they get into these really deep loops, these really dark places, and they don't know where to go, it's very dangerous. Like, there's no one helping to guide them, to help them, to do therapy with them. And it is true. So I would advise everyone to exercise caution in doing this. Nonetheless, so, like, in psychiatry and psychotherapy, in particular in psychiatry, let's say the safer way that we've been taught is that we'll prescribe a drug, an antidepressant, or some, like, whatever, antipsychotic, anti-schizophrenia, whatever medicine it is that numbs us out to whatever emotions are rising. So instead of having to address the emotion and take it to the heart, it's like it's safer for us just to put this person on drugs. And the moment this person is off the drugs, they're at risk to themselves and they're at risk to society. And it is true. It is absolutely true. And because when we're on the drugs for a very long period of time, the moment we come off them, the issue that we face is that for the prolonged period in time that we were on the drugs, those emotions were continuing to build. So let's say we were depressed and we're now on drugs. So we're forcing the numbness to set in place using drugs. And so there's absolutely no opportunity for us to feel sadness anymore. It just doesn't exist in our reality. It hormonally can't happen for us. And so there are events that will happen through our lifetime that will inevitably give rise to sadness. So a loved one dies. We're on antidepressants. What happens? We can't grieve. We're unable to grieve. So it becomes even more trapped. Now imagine that person who's been on drugs, has witnessed death of loved ones, breakup of relationships, hasn't been able to feel any of that grief, now comes off the antidepressants. Holy crap, they're going to get hit hard. Strong and hard, right? So we do have to exercise some caution here about, I'm sharing all of this information. It's very powerful information. It's called emotional martial arts for that reason. It can be dangerous. We can harm ourselves and others so easily and so readily when the intensity of emotions is overwhelming, and we have no practice of being able to take that to the heart. So that's what I would have to say when it comes to stage 2 of emotional martial arts, which is our ability to be able to feel, to recognize the emotions, and it really is about, now we're able to throw the punches, we're able to block, we can see it, we can recognize it, right? We see that there's a risk in doing it. You can injure yourself, meaning you can come into a really, really dark place and not know how to get out of it, right? Until we're able to bring that to the heart. So, any questions? I guess probably that's why I've been more selective, very selective about the group that I've been presenting this to, because of some of the dangers. And I know people who have gone to really deep diving work, whether it has been through plant medicine, or it has been through men's groups or women's groups, that kind of get really stuck in a loop. Something comes to the surface, something about the past, and we find ourselves unable to exit that space, and we're stuck. We're stuck in psychosis. We're stuck in relapsing of remorse. We're stuck in this depressive regret. And yeah, we don't have tools to go into the heart. So I probably will do different mechanisms, ways in going to the heart in perhaps separate videos, different techniques of doing that. My suggestion always, I think, is to do that work first, to do the heart centering work first. So we have a very well practiced process within our body of being able to forgive frequently, often, being able to tap into that space, being able to accept frequently, being able to embrace frequently. And I found meditation is a fantastic way. I know a lot of people are like microdosing plant medicines to be able to stay in that space more frequently. I love eye gazing, and I know, like, you know, in a lot of men's circles and women's circles, you might be sharing some trauma you're reliving again and again and again and again, and just to find acceptance within the group for that and compassion helps us so greatly to reach a point of forgiveness. So yeah, that's the end of stage 2. The next stage we'll do next time, which is stage 4, which is more about strategy. And what I mean by that, it's like in martial arts, you'll sorry, I've missed one step before that. The next stage is actually stage 3, which is learning how to tackle unhealthily projected emotions. So other people are projecting things towards us through shame, through fear, through disgust. How do we block that? So we're learning how to spar. So stage 2 was learning how to punch and learning how to kick. That was just purely with ourselves. Stage 3 now is learning how to spar. So someone is saying something to you, they're projecting something, they're giving you feedback potentially, they're wanting to control you. How do we tackle that? What does a block look like? What does throwing a punch look like? What does a hard block look like, and what does a softer, skillful block look like? Right? The hard block might be like numbness to it. Just, I don't care what you're saying. Piss off. A hard punch might be like aggression, immediate counter-aggression. But how do we work relational artistry into that? How do we work some skill into that? So in sparring, like Bruce Lee says, like, be like water. It truly is like that. We're moving with what's being delivered to us, as opposed to, like, let's say karate, which is, and this isn't about the most skilled of karate people, but where you're just learning on, off, on, off. Okay. And that ends. So,
excellent. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Love you all.
Thank you, Chris, for all your beautiful insights and experience. I love it, and I love you.
Love you too.
Chris.
Alrighty. Till next time.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.